welcome everyone. Today we'll be talking about arrow functions versus traditional functions in JavaScript. If you're used to using traditional functions, most of these things will be the same, but we'll see some important differences. There are two main benefits to using arrow functions. The first is that the arrow function helps you save space visually, as they have a more concise syntax, and we'll see that in a little bit. And then the second benefit is that they do not bind to the this keyword. So we'll see how that plays out a little bit later on in the video. But let's first take a look at them visually. So here is a traditional, very basic function that we have here, just called hello, and it simply returns this string there, right? So we can use that as such. But let's take a look at the arrow function and then look at the differences that we have here. So notice in the traditional function we have the word function, whereas here in the arrow function that is missing. And then in the arrow function we have the fat arrow right here. But it'll function the same. So if you say hello again, well, that is the exact same. In fact, they return the same thing. I can even change it. Let's say hello there again. And then if we do hello too, as you can see, it does the same thing. And one other interesting thing that we can see about arrow functions is that they have an implicit return statement. So the same function that we have above, we can use it removing the braces and removing the return statement. We can do this only if there is one statement. If an arrow function has only one statement, we can return, we can remove the return. And that is because the arrow function syntax implicitly states this return. So you can see here we've changed it from about 3 lines, and we went down to 1 here for this basic example. Now, if you have multiple statements, however, then just like in traditional functions, you'll need a return statement. And of course, you'll need the curly braces around the code block as well. So here is the arrow function, right? And here we're passing a parameter hour, for example. So if you do hello, and let's say it's 11 in the morning, it'll say good morning, whereas hello, let's say it's 1 p.m., it'll just say hello there. So yeah, so here is a basic look at the visual differences between a traditional function that we have up here versus an arrow function right here. Then in terms of parameters, it's actually the same as you would have in a traditional function as well, as we saw in this example right here, right? So you passed in 11 or 13 in for hour right there, right? Or we could do it slightly differently. So hello name, we have this fat arrow function, hello plus name. Okay, so here, let's just say hello Alf. In here, yeah, so we have the function. Notice we don't have the return statement because we have the implicit return, and we've passed this name variable in, so we can use that right afterwards. And it would be the same with multiple parameters. So let's just say hello, first name, last name. So here is how we would do this short arrow function, or fat arrow function, but with 2 parameters. So let's just say hello, and first name Mr. and last name T. Right. So then you can see it passes it through there. Now let's take a look at the keyword this. And this is actually one of the main benefits of arrow functions. So with arrow functions, there is no binding of this in the function itself. And so it's bound to the code that contains the arrow function. So in traditional functions, this keyword represents the object that called the function. So in this case, in this example here, let's take a look at that in terms of a traditional function, which I have right here. So the function itself just really writes what this is, right? Right beside the button. And so we'll notice that this in the traditional functions will refer back to the button, but because the short arrow functions do not bind this, then it'll actually refer back to the window, because that will be the parent element, so to speak. So let's take a look. So if we do click on traditional functions right here, so what happened, so click on the button, let's see, traditional, so document get element by ID, button, add event listener click. So after clicking the button, it'll call the function hello. Then in hello, all it'll do is it'll get the demo ID, and it'll insert, in HTML, it'll put this. So what is this? Is essentially what we're looking at here. And so you can see that the parent element for this function is the button itself, because it was a traditional function. Now, let's take a look at the short arrow function. As I mentioned earlier, there's no binding of this. And so the object will not be the button, but instead we can see here that it is the window. Then you may be thinking, when should I use short arrow functions and when should I use traditional functions? But in general, you should really strive for code readability and easiness of debugging. So if by using the short arrow functions, if this helps you to shorten your code in a way that makes it easier to read and less likely to create bugs, then you should definitely use those instead. Just want you to be careful when you're referring to this, as it will reference the parent scope, which is different, is a main difference between the traditional functions and the short arrow functions. That's it today for arrow functions. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below.